Yo, what's up, guys? Teacher Paul here, and today we are reacting to Scandinavian folklore. Interesting. This is the Invisible People. This is from a request from Bertil, who says, "This is some Swedish folklore for ya." Okay. In the title, it says Älvor, vättar, vittra, and huldrefolk. Don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but let's check this out. This is from a channel called Annoyed Kitten. If you want to go and check it out, link is in the description. But come back here and see my reaction to it. Let's go. Annoyed Kitten.
With that out of the way, let's start talking about the invisible people, because that's what you are here for, I hope.
You can only talk about them because you can't see them. Okay, let's go.
One of the beings that lives close to humans in Scandinavian folklore is the Invisibles. These are not one and the same being. This is a sort of a catch-all name that include very many of different beings that we have up here. Sometimes it is hard to decide if it is several different beings or one and the same being. You will get different answers depending on who you ask and where in Scandinavia you ask.
Have you ever seen an invisible
Sweden,
person?
they are called vittra. And if you visit Gotland, the big island in the Baltic Sea, they are named de små underjordi, which means the small ones underground. And in Norway, they are generally called huldrefolk. And Iceland also used the word huldrefolkir. Further south in Sweden, you can find them under the name vättar or Älvor. All of these beings are so similar that you can put them under the collective word, the Invisibles. But at the same time, they are...
It sounds like that cartoon, The Invincibles. They should make a cartoon or an animation called The Invisibles. I don't know. Is there any movie or cartoon about this, or it would be interesting. So we haven't found out what they are yet. They're invisible, but where did the folklore come from? Like, normally it's people talking about these things, right? So did you grow up listening to these story or these tales, or are there poems about it? Are there songs about it? Let me know. I think she's probably going to talk more about it, but let's go.
are completely different beings. As usual with the folklore, it is stories that spread, changed, and end up getting their own life, and trying to put these beings in neat lists and boxes is not easily done. Therefore, I found it easier to make a video about the Invisibles and include both vättar, vittra, Älvor, huldrefolkir, and huldrefolk, although they are in some areas completely separate beings. Just like tomten, trolls, and our mistress of lakes and mountains and forests, all of these invisible beings seem to have their root in the pre-Christian era.
But trolls are real.
In the Edda writes about
I saw Troll Hunter
dark elves,
documentary,
and light elves. This can in some ways be interpreted as evil and good, but as we already established in many of my other videos, it is not that simple. The Iron Age religions seem to have had more sides than just black or white. This might instead be more about chaos and order. It is also mentioned in the old Icelandic tales about the practice of putting out food and gifts for them to keep the neighborliness between humans and the Invisibles. And this seems to be a very old-rooted...
So it's not only for the Fjällnisse, for the barn elf or the Santa, the house Santa, it's for the Invisibles too. You know what's crazy? If you put the food out and you go the next day and it's not there anymore, what are you gonna think? It could be an animal, or it could be the invisible people. I saw a video from India where I think it was India. Apparently there was a person who died of thirst in an area, and now everybody leaves water in that area, and every time they go, the water is gone. Like, only empty bottles of water, and so many empty bottles of water, because it can never quench a dead man's thirst. Interesting, huh?
Between humans and the Invisibles. And this seems to be a very old-rooted habit, something that the people didn't stop doing just because we became Christians. And you that have seen my previous videos about folklore knows what comes now.
So
Yes,
wait,
of
even
course.
Christians nowadays still do that tradition? That's interesting.
This was not looked upon with keen eyes from the church. The church have never liked any kind of folklore because that is a version of idolatry. And the Christian medieval church, with its very black and white view of the world, deemed the invisibles as the devil's henchmen. But the people kept on telling stories about these beings and also kept doing offerings to them all the way up until today. It is not as common and as traditionalized as putting porridge out for your tomte, but at least up
Tomte.
until about 100 years ago, people still left some food or booze on the pile of rocks where they knew the invisibles lived. And for sure, they warned the invisibles before pouring out something hot on the ground. Look out down below, my grandma used to call before pouring out her hot washing water when we was visiting their fishing cottage during summers.
That's so
If my
interesting.
grandma really believed in them, I don't know. I don't think she did. But she went by the tradition and the feeling of what harm can it do? Better safe than sorry.
Do you guys believe in the
According to
invisibles?
the Edda, these beings, the Älvor, was part of the godly beings, just like dwarves, the gods, and Jotnar. All these beings went under the name of vättar.
Vetter.
Somewhere during history, after we get Christianized up here, the story about where the invisible people came from changed and got a more Christianized version, both in Norway, Sweden, and Iceland. The story has many different versions where the details is a bit different. But the
Let's find
core of the
out.
story goes that Adam and Eve got so many children that Eve was ashamed of how many they had, and she hid them from God and denied their existence.
What?
God then got angry and said, "What man hides from God, God will hide from man." The children then turned invisible, and all the invisible people comes from these children, just like all humans come from the children Adam and Eve didn't try to hide.
That's interesting.
The invisible people
But how can you hide something from God? It's an interesting take. Interesting. What people hide from God, God hides from the people. That's very interesting. Are they, but they're not ghosts, right? They're not ghosts. They're literally invisible people, so they live in a different dimension, maybe. It's interesting. Kind of feels like Stranger Things, you know? Stranger Things. They have like a another reality kind of where people live there but you can't see them.
lives next to humans, or, well, rather under them. They live under our floors, in the big oak tree in the yard, or under rocks and hills where the animal grazed, and they share a lot of traits with the trolls, and also at the same time with our tomte. Just as with the
The
trolls
upside
and some of
down.
the other folklore beings, the further away from the farm they lived, the more dangerous.
Wait, do you think Stranger Things also goes into this theory, like the upside down? Because you know a lot of Hollywood movies and a lot of Hollywood goes into, like even Lord of the Rings goes into Norse mythology. Do you think the upside down is something to do with this or no? Have you ever watched Stranger Things? Do you know what I'm talking about? Is Vecna something Norse related? Is Dungeons and Dragons related to Norse mythology or no? A few questions here for the chat.
Trolls, and also at the same time with our tomte. Just as with the trolls and
The
some of
upside
the other
down.
folklore beings, the further away from the farm they lived, the more dangerous they were. I have included Älvor, the Nordic elves, under the invisibles, just like the Institute for Language and Folk Memories does on their online map for the collective of the stories around folklore. And
That
even
looks
if they
very
do share
terrifying.
some similarities with the other invisibles, they are at the same time very different. While in Iceland and Norway the terms huldrefolk and huldefolkir seems to in general be more similar to what we in Sweden call vättar or vittra, Älvor stands out. They might have had more similarities with both huldrefolk, vättar and vittra from the start, but later in history they are clearly treated in the stories as a being of their own. It is a clear fact that Tolkien took a lot of inspiration from the
It
Nordic
is.
mythology and
It's a fact.
folklore when he created the books around the Lord of the Ring.
And they have
But his
the
noble and
elves, light
statuesque
and dark.
elves are far from the Swedish elves in the folklore. The Swedish elves are white or light grey fog creatures that you normally don't see at all. You just hear them and their music. In the stories that do describe people that has been lucky or unlucky enough to see them, the elves are described as beautiful women, small as dolls and very white, almost so they glow by themselves. They are very often dancing in the fog, and when you see the low-hanging fog over a meadow, it is easy to see how these stories came about.
That is quite
If you
creepy,
look
though.
hard enough, you can almost see them yourself, dancing little creatures in the white moving fog. Älvor danced
Have
in
you
the
ever seen
mornings
one?
and evenings, and you could see where because they left circles of darker grass on the meadows after their dancing.
Wait a second. Do you think that has something to do also with Signs? I've seen the movie Signs. Mel Gibson. You know the crops that have like that looks like a crop circle.
See them yourself, dancing little creatures in the white moving fog. Älvor danced in the mornings and evenings, and you could see where because they left circles of darker grass on the meadows after their dancing. Not much is told about these beings more than that they seem to be living in groups and that they very seldom did any good for the humans. Only a few stories tells of someone warning them from getting burned on the fire or something like that, and thus get rewarded. But mostly these beings have stories that tells of people getting sick or crazy.
Guys,
Swedish
again,
elves are not
this scene right here is giving me the creeps. This could very well be a story for a horror film. You know, and I'm gonna take this opportunity to talk about a horror film that is in our wish list that I've added, which is I don't know if you guys know, it's a Swedish, American Swedish movie, I think, American and Swedish, and we haven't done any horror movies from Sweden. So, guys, we have a wish list. Since we don't have like a sponsored segment, let's talk about this real quick. And I'm gonna open it here for you guys to see, which is this one right over here. Don't know if you guys ever watched it. It's called Midsummer. So I've seen this in posters here in the UK. Midsummer. Don't know if you guys want me to react to that movie, but it's in the wish list if you want to check it out. The way it works is you guys go over to the wish list and support a movie, and once we hit the goal, I react to the full movie, and you can watch it here, or like with the cut down version here on YouTube, or on Patreon for the full movie reaction, and on Buy Me a Coffee. Yeah, I think this could be a great horror film, to be honest with you. This whole story about the invisible people and, you know, the like literally the way they're looking, it actually feels like a horror film already.
generally a nice being. It is very often told that if you pee in one of those rings that the Älvor left behind after their dancing, you would get sick and lose your ability to, well, get it
What?
up if you were a man.
Is that for real? Has
Hearing
anybody
their
tried?
music could mean it was already too late. You would never ever get that music out of your ears again, and you will probably be crazy for the rest of your life. If you was foolish enough to enter the dance, then they could either dance with you until you drop dead from exhaustion, or they
Wait, the Midsummer horror movie is not How Much Summer in Sweden, just to clarify. Wait, are you saying the movie does not represent Midsummer in Sweden? I don't think so.
if you was foolish enough to enter the dance, then they could either dance with you until you dropped dead from exhaustion, or they took you in under the mountain and forced you to live with them there in their grey, strange, misty lands.
Yeah, the horror movie is in Sweden.
Sometimes they just kept you for a while and then let you go, but you would never be the same again. If the Älvor
That's
had put
crazy.
sickness on you, there was one way to try and be saved. Find one of the small pits called älvakvarnar, elven mills, and put some fat or booze or coins there to try and please them to take the sickness away again.
The question I have here, sorry for pausing again, is just that in the United States, a lot of people they feel these, you know, these stories. A lot of people do, they really like feel it, right? Does that happen in Scandinavia too? Do you guys like? Are there people who actually believe it, who actually make videos about it, who actually tell the stories, who actually swear by it, or no? Or because I've seen so many videos from United States where they are like really, really like really going into the story and trying to like they're hunters, you know, people who actually believe like in Bigfoot and actually hunt Bigfoot, you know what I'm saying? And make videos and it happens in Sweden as well, in Scandinavia or no?
Today we know that dark green
The
circles on the
conspiracy
grass is made from a
theorists.
special type of fungus that grows in a circle pattern
Oh,
and
you
make
know
the
that.
grass
Okay.
change color due to the chemical change on the soil. And the little Älvor mills are whole
So maybe there's an excuse or there's an explanation also for the crop circles in the United States, right?
green circles on the grass is
Wait, let's go back.
some fat or booze or coins there to try and please them to take the sickness away again. Today we know that dark green circles on the grass is made from a special type of fungus that grows in a circle pattern and make the grass change color due to the chemical change on the soil. And the little Älvor mills are holes left by the Bronze Age people that made carvings into the rocks. We do not know, however, what those little holes actually were for. Could they have served a religious purpose, or did they just came to be because there our ancestors grounded and mixed the paint for the other carvings? That is something neither me nor anyone else can actually answer, and for
What
the
do you
people
think?
back in the days that didn't know so much about archaeology in Bronze Age, this was deemed to be magical and made by the elves. Just as with trolls and other folklore beings, the Nordic elves have been used to explain different mental issues and also some sexual transmitted diseases. And these elven mills was sometimes the only hope of getting rid of whatever plagued you. I guess
Okay.
that a theory that isn't too far out there is that the elves from the beginning was Dökka-alfar, dark elves, and the rest of the invisibles that goes under the name huldrefolk, vättar and vittra was the ljus-alfar. Huldrefolk, vättar, vittra, they are much more similar to each other, even if they also have their own special sets of traits. And they are not as chaotic and evil as the elves. They all live in families like the trolls do, and just like the trolls, they have livestock, they wash their clothes, have babies and marry, they do baking, and seem to live normal lives like we have. But like the tomte, they live closer to us than the Älvor tend to do. They are our invisible neighbors, and as long as you respect them, they don't usually cause so much trouble. They tend to look like
Yeah,
we
don't
do.
mess with them.
They
They don't
might
mess
be a
with
bit
you.
smaller, and if they are wearing red clothes, you need to watch out, because that could be a warning of dangers in the near future. Or that they were angry over something, which often is kind of the same thing. You do not want to anger your invisible magical neighbors, because that's when things can go very wrong and your barn burns down or your kids get sick.
Oh wow. It's just like there's
There is
something
a
in the
story
barn.
told from many places around Sweden about the vätte or the vittra. And that is the one about where one of the invisibles pay a visit to a farmer one night and complains that the new barn is in the wrong place. The cows are pissing right down on the dinner table for the poor
What?
family of the vätte. The farmer follows the man down below and is invited in a very rich and beautiful home under the barn floor. But just as the vätte told him, he can see that from the roof of the dinner table the cow's piss is dripping down. The farmer moves the cows and the barn, and the vätte family is rewarding him in some way, usually with a silver spoon or a sheep or a cow that is so big and fat and beautiful and milks so much better than the other animals they have. This story is told
It's
in a
very
vast
interesting.
variety. Sometimes they only understand what is happening because the cows or the horse is so thin and always stands completely soaked from sweat every morning. But when they move,
You know, when she was telling the story about going down in the barn and visiting the family and the house, it reminded me of Snekker Andersen. You know that is Snekker Andersen? Is that how you say it? where he goes and visits the Santa's house and he see his family. Kind of reminded me of um, that story.
And always stands completely soaked from sweat every morning. But when they move the barn, the cow or the horse is suddenly fine again. Sometimes it is the
Interesting.
farmer's wife that has the sight and say good morning to her neighbor that she sees in the corner of her eyes. And then the invisible sneer that it would be a good morning if the cows or the horses didn't piss on the table. There are other stories about what can
So
happen when you
eerie.
accidentally build your barn over the invisible's roads or houses. Sometimes the cows are miserable and restless, and when a smart woman or man does some magic, they can see that the invisibles have their main road down to the lake right through the barn. They move the barn, and after that, everything calms down and the animal thrives again. Vättar was also used to explain some strange things found in nature.
Two cents
Before we all
whispers.
got enlightened by
Are
education,
those nails?
or did we really? People thought that when they found fossil parts of the extinct squid-like creature, the belemnite, this was candles that the vättar had left for some reason.
Candles.
They called these stones vätteljus, vätte candles, and they was of course considered very magical and they could cure all kinds of illness. When it is not stories that comes directly from the farm, it comes.
But where did they find that? And that could be like a lucky amulet. I feel like people would wear those around their necks. Like people wear rabbit foots.
From what is called fäbodarna. Fä is a
Fäbodeman.
word for animal and bod is a word for a small cottage. So
Fäboden.
basically animal cottage. There is a lot of land that is not suitable for growing crops, but it still has a lot of good rich grass that grows there. In some areas these lands was high up in the mountains, and in some areas further in the south it could be close to bogs and marshlands. Before we had tractors and large machines to help us with farming, the grass that grew closest to the farm was needed for the winter and could not be used for food for the animals during the summer. So the young girls and women, and sometimes very young boys, took the cows and the sheep to these places during summer to get good food for the animals, while the grass that grew closer to the farm could be turned into hay for the colder month. It was a hard life for a couple of weeks for the herders. The days was filled with work, with milking, making butter and cheese, picking berries, and taking care of all the wool that came from the sheep. Some of them also collected birch bark that was used later to make a lot of different crafts. The life up in the fäbodarna could sometimes also be very lonely, and it was far between the cottages. The milkmaids developed a very special song technique called kulning.
Oh.
It is used both as a calling for the cows and the goats and to get in contact.
Didn't we see Jonna Yinten do this? I think we saw a video of Jonna Yinten do the kulning.
The milkmaids developed a very special song technique called kulning. It is used both as a calling for the cows and the goats and to get in contact with the other cottagers in the area, because the voice with this calling technique is carrying very well over a long distance. I have tested myself, and it goes at least 3 kilometers in the right wooded areas.
No way, 3
Different
kilometers.
sounds meant different things, so the women, girls, and boys could make sure if their long distance neighbor was either safe or needed help with something like an animal that had gotten lost. The herders also used horns made out of birch bark. Both kulning and the birch bark horns still lives on in our Scandinavian folk music, and it is a very special sound. Up in these lonely places, of course, there was a good place to put stories about vättar or vittra. There's a lot of stories, one that shows up in several places and sometimes even told about trolls instead of vättar. And that is about the young woman that is up alone in one of these summer cottages, and the vättar wants her to marry one of them. In several of the versions, she managed to get the dog to run down to the farm and get help. When her fiancé or brother is arriving at the cottage, she is already dressed as a bride, and he managed to save her with just minutes from getting taken by the invisibles. Sometimes these stories also tells that the crown the bride had been given was given to the church to be used for other brides. That is a tradition since long in Sweden, that the local church have at least one bridal crown that the bride is allowed to borrow for her big day. A tradition that still goes on today, and some of the crowns that the brides can borrow has 150 years or more as a track record. They
150
are
years.
very beautiful, and the older ones is not hard to imagine having a sort of
Must be very
magical origin
expensive.
from the Invisibles. They almost look a bit otherworldly in their beautiful craftsmanship.
It's really,
Just
really
like the
well made.
tradition around the bridal crowns, the stories and beliefs in the Invisibles have lived on into our modern days. But today it is not told about barns and cows that needed to be moved. Hey, katten!
Her cat. Two in the brigade.
But today it is not told about barns and cows that needs to be moved. It is told about big roads that is built on top of vättar or vittra homes, and therefore that part of the road has a spiking high amount of car accidents or other strange things that happens there. The vättar is angry and is causing trouble. One of these roads is here, a big freeway called E4, E4, just north of the town of Gävle. In Iceland, this also happens at some places, and I haven't any fact on this, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was also the case in Norway. I know for a fact that in
Beautiful.
both Sweden and Iceland there are stories, lots of them, and I don't think
Beautiful
Norway
place.
is much different here. The stories about road trucks breaking down, car accidents, people dying under very strange circumstances, and so on. And
Dang.
if you see a strange curve on a road where the logical place would be to put it straight, you can bet your sweet behind on that there will be stories about how the government was forced to move just this part of the road around the Vette home.
Yeah, no
If the
way.
stories are true or
No way. That is not true, right? That is not true. The government wouldn't do that. But there could be some environmental problems. Thank you for joining in, Susan. See you tomorrow. But there could be some environmental, like erosion or something. But that is not true. The government wouldn't be superstitious and do that. Or that could be even corruption to kind of like make it more expensive. I don't know. I haven't heard a lot of stories of government corruption in Scandinavia, but um, it why is there a curve? Well, it could be literally just straight. And Lena said there's always road work in on the E45. Is that true? There's always roadworks, but that's a good thing, right? Always maintenance.
not is a case of belief. If you ask the government, they will deny it and say it is for a different reason. But the people believing will say that the government denies it because they can't be seen as people believing in the invisibles.
They would.
So, what do you believe? Could it be the invisibles? Or perhaps ghosts? With those thoughts, I will leave you for this time. Thank you for listening, stay safe, and I'll see you in my next video. Subscribe!
Okay, guys, that was a nice video. Very informative, very educational. Go support this channel, and the link is in the description as always. This is from Annoyed Kitten. Yeah, very interestingly made. Very interesting story about the Invisibles. I don't know, like, I don't know how, I don't know how folklore, like. Oh, wait a second. Is that what it means? The lore of the folklore? I just realized that. This is lore of the folk. Okay, so it's the tales of the people that tell the tales. So, okay, I get it now. It's like stories that you tell your children just to, I don't know, entertain them, and then it actually becomes, you grow up believing in these things, but Nobody wants to be superstitious, so they say, "Oh, I'm not superstitious. I don't believe in it." But just in case, knock on wood and stuff like that. Very interesting. I did not grow up believing in any folklore or anything, any stories, to be honest. Um, Not even in school. You know, Normally you would have stories in school of the girl, the ghost girl in the bathroom. Stuff like that. Lena says a challenging, also historically referred to as an oaf or oaf, um, is a human-like creature found throughout much of European folklore. According to folklore, a changing, a changling. Oh, that's how you say it. Changling. I said challenging. Changeling was a substitute left by a supernatural being when kidnapping a human being. Interesting. In Iceland, they had to redirect a road because people protested that the road were planned to be constructed over an elven graveyard. Wow. Yeah. So it's basically people actually believe in it, and the government goes and says, "Okay, let's do it. Let's do what the people are saying." That is very interesting. Very interesting. How powerful that is. How many people actually believe in it. And there's always something that there must be a small truth to it, because how can people believe in it? There must be a reason they believe in it. They must have seen something. They must have heard something. Or do you think it's just things that happen when they're, I don't know, drunk, or I don't know, tired, hallucinating? Or do you think there must be something that happened to people? Do we take people's word for it when they say I saw something, or do we just think they're hallucinating? I think it's more common to believe in it in Iceland than anywhere else. I heard Iceland believes a lot in Norse mythology. Like some people actually make it a religion, right? At least that's what I have heard. But with that said, guys, we're going to the next video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one. Go over to Buy Me a Coffee or to Patreon to watch my full movie reactions, to support the channel, and to request videos just like Bertzel did. Or go over here to see more of my educational playlists. And I'll see you soon. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Take care. Bye-bye.